everyone, this is Miller Maryland, and today we're going to be looking at Mexican politics. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the Sexenio presidents. Now, what is Sexenio, you may ask? Well, you know how in America presidents can only serve 2 4-year terms? Well, in Mexico, a president can serve only 1 6-year term. After that, they cannot run or hold the position ever again, even if they are a caretaker. The Sexenio was a result of years of either unstable or strongman rule in the years beforehand. Porfirio Diaz, for example, ruled Mexico as a dictator from 1876 until 1911 when the Mexican Revolution happened. And no, I'm not making this next part up. During the revolution, there was this one dude, his name was Pedro Lascarain, who served as president for 45 minutes, not even an hour. So essentially, the Sexenio is set up to prevent a concentration of power like with Diaz and to address the people's needs. But the first person who actually served a full term under this new system was Lázaro Cárdenas. Before him, there was the Maximato, which was a transitional period that sought to fill a power vacuum after a previous president, Obregón, was assassinated before he could take office again. The president at the time, Plutarco Elias Calles, couldn't continue the job, but retained behind-the-scenes powers as the maximum chief. 3 people were president during this time, but they're probably not super important, so we're just going to skip over them. One more thing, until 2000, Mexico would be ruled by the Institutional Revolutionary Party, or PRI, which is essentially a big tent party or a party that encompasses multiple political ideologies. So we're going to see multiple different political positions from within this party, and thus presidents from the same political party that have different political views. Now, let's begin. Lázaro Cárdenas served as president of Mexico from 1934 to 1940. He participated in the Mexican Revolution and became general of the Constitutional Army, which fought against Diaz's regime. After the revolution, he became a close affiliate of Calles, but in 1934, after winning that year's presidential election, he backstabbed and exiled Calles, who thought he was going to control him like he had with the previous guys. As president, Cardenas fulfilled the goals of the Mexican Revolution. He introduced land reform, distributing land to the peasants. He also nationalized oil in 1938, organized workers into unions, which fostered a great labor movement, expanded access to healthcare and education, and oversaw massive infrastructure projects which greatly benefited the Mexican people. He remains one of the most popular and well-loved presidents in Mexico. Manuel Avila Camacho served as president from 1940 to 1946. Camacho had ties to Cardenas and fought alongside him in the Mexican Revolution, and after that served under his administration as the Secretary of National Defense. As president, he continued the work started by Cardenas. He helped reduce illiteracy, continued land reform, and built more schools and hospitals. He also established the Mexican Social Security Institute, or IMSS, which is a governmental organization that assists in social security and other benefits. Aside from that, he greatly improved Mexican relations with the United States. He supported the US and its allies during World War II and initiated the Bracero program in 1942, which allowed millions of Mexicans to legally work in the United States in the agriculture and development sectors. All these combined, he gets the title of the Gentleman President. Miguel Alemán Valdes served as president from 1946 to 1952. He was the first of these presidents that did not partake in the Mexican Revolution, nor did a lot of his cabinet. As president, he oversaw the start of the Mexican Miracle, a period of massive economic growth in Mexico that continued into 1970. During that time, the economy was growing more than 5% every year. Valdez's actions helped contribute to this. He greatly improved infrastructure. He expanded highways and created dams, the latter of which not only controlled flooding and improved the water supply, but also allowed for the expansion of large-scale agriculture. He also developed campuses for UNAM, which is like a super prestigious college in Mexico. He also built the Mexico City International Airport, which greatly contributed to tourism in the country. After he left office, he directed Mexico's tourism agency, doing so for the rest of his life. Adolfo Ruiz Cortines served as president from 1952 to 1958. He was the last president to have been a part of the Constitutional Army and fought in the Mexican Revolution. Afterward, he served in multiple departments before getting into politics. During his tenure as president, he presided over the ongoing Mexican Miracle, which was at its greatest during this time. He implemented sweeping social reforms, such as giving women the right to vote in 1953, curbing corruption, and further expanding the IMSS and other social programs to improve working conditions for the people. Corruption was especially a key focus of his. As president, Ruiz Cortines worked hard to ensure that public officials were honest about their actions, especially given the hardships that the Mexican people were facing at the time. However, by the end of his term, there were protests from teachers and laborers who demanded higher pay. Adolfo López Mateos served as president from 1958 to 1964. As the president, López Mateos sought to make his government a left within the Constitution. Keep in mind that PRI is a catch-all party, so any president can generally have any ideology. So under López Mateos, multiple educational institutes were established, including the National Commission for Free Textbooks and the National Museum of Anthropology. He continued the Mexican Miracle by fostering industrial growth and attracting foreign investment. He also nationalized the electricity industry. However, he cracked down on the militant railway workers' union strikes, and the people leading said strikes were sent to prison. Lopez Mateos sought to prevent future incidents like this by introducing the National Commission for the Implementation of Profit Sharing, which apportioned a considerable share of company profits to laborers. In terms of foreign policy, he maintained a non-interventionist stance. When the Cuban Revolution happened, the US sought to mobilize the rest of Latin America against Cuba. However, Lopez Mateos refused to comply, instead supporting Cuba's independence. His actions and decisions throughout his leadership would make him the last popular pre-president. Gustavo Diaz Ordaz served as president from 1964 to 1970. He was the Secretary of the Interior in Lopez Mateos' administration, which is essentially a ministry focusing on domestic policy and security. Keep that in mind. During that time, he had de facto control over the country whenever Lopez Mateos wasn't around to do the job, and whenever he had that control, he sought to counter strikes and popular uprisings through strict control. This authoritarian style of governing continued when he became president in 1964, and this is the thing he's most remembered for. The defining moment of his tenure was in 1968, when he brutally responded to the Mexican movement. Lasting several months, students from several universities took to the streets to protest Mexico hosting the 1968 Summer Olympics, which were to take place in October. They also protested the dominance of the PRI in politics and its authoritarianism and demanded democracy and civil liberties. This unfortunately resulted in the Tlatelolco massacre, which led to the deaths of hundreds of unarmed students. The Summer Olympics took place later that month. This moment was the defining point of Diaz Ordaz's rule. Despite presiding over the tail end of the Mexican miracle, and despite establishing the Mexican Institute of Petroleum, he is going to be remembered for that one day. From here on out, it does not get better, not for a long time. A lot of these presidents, they're going to be pretty unpopular. Moving on. Luis Echevarria served as president from 1970 to 1976. Like his predecessor, he served as the Secretary of the Interior under Diaz Ordaz, which is why some people suspect he had a role to play in the Tlatelolco massacre. As president, Echevarria sought to emulate Lázaro Cárdenas' left-wing populism and reforms, and not only that, he wanted to be UN Secretary General and a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He wanted to take Mexico into a non-aligned path, not positioning Mexico towards either the US or the USSR, while in the midst of a Cold War. He also adopted a more left-wing stance. He provided asylum to people who fled Pinochet's regime, started normalizing relations with socialist and communist states such as China, and supported a UN resolution condemning Zionism. At the same time, he was very much an authoritarian. He oversaw the Dirty War, where the government targeted left-wing students and groups, which is ironic considering he wanted to take a more left-wing stance. He also, and this is true, banned rock music. Yeah, this is a real thing. Representing youth rebellion and dissent? Okay. This guy lived to be 100 years old, dying in 2022, so hypothetically he would have been able to watch the first season of Squid Game and have a TikTok account. Jose López Portillo, this guy who genuinely looks like everyone's uncle and grandpa, served as president from 1976 to 1982. López Portillo actually had limited political experience, but since he was such a good childhood friend of Luis Echevarria, he managed to get positions in his cabinet, such as finance secretary after Echevarria fired this other guy for expressing concern about the economic situation in Mexico at the time. He won the 1976 election unopposed, with 100% of the vote. Think about that. I'm not kidding. He came to power while Mexico was in the midst of an economic crisis, with unemployment, inflation, and debt rising. And even though he sought to do something about it, ordering the nationalization of Mexican banks right before he left office, he is more remembered for the massive amount of corruption and nepotism in his administration. He appointed family members to various government posts, including his sister to the Mexican version of the MPAA. By the time he left office, Mexico had the largest foreign debt in the world. Miguel de la Madrid served as president from 1982 to 1988. He was left with the mess Portillo left, and in a bid to counter that, implemented neoliberal policies such as reducing government spending, aka austerity, and privatizing state-owned business. That didn't do much good as inflation was super high throughout his term. And if economic conditions weren't bad enough, in 1985 an 8.1 magnitude earthquake struck Mexico City and killed 5,000 people and made many more homeless. De la Madrid refused international aid at first and only sent the military to quell looting, not for rescue efforts. A year later, Mexico hosted the FIFA World Cup, and a lot of people didn't like that. Like, at all. Though he did give the trophy to Maradona, so amazing? Then on the other hand, he sought to curb corruption, launching a so-called moral renovation to expose numerous corrupt officials. He also sought to legalize abortion. However, because of the negative response from the Catholic Church and conservatives, that did not go into effect. Carlos Salinas de Gortari served as president from 1988 to 1994. Much like his buddy de la Madrid, he sought to continue the shift to neoliberalism. He was the guy who helped create NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement. NAFTA lasted from the 1990s until 2020, when it would be replaced by USMCA. At home, Salinas sought to make amends to the other parties like the Conservative National Action Party, or PAN, keep this in mind for later, especially after the municipal and governor elections swayed in favor of PAN. He did this by recognizing their victories in exchange for them supporting his policies. He also pursued détente with the Catholic Church after years of animosity between the two. But things were far from good for this guy. For starters, people believed that his election was rigged. There was a lot of shady stuff happening behind the scenes as well. In fact, his older brother Raul was implicated in severe money laundering. By the time he left office, the combination of mismanagement and corruption caused Mexico's economy to collapse. So all this combined, this would put him in absolute crap territory. He is one of, if not the most unpopular presidents in Mexican history. Let me put this into perspective for you. This exists. Ernesto Zedillo served as president from 1994 to 2000. Much like de la Madrid, he inherited a terrible economic crisis and responded by devaluing the peso by 15%, which did far from resolve the problem. But after a series of later reforms and a $20 billion grant from the US, the crisis ended. However, he also had to deal with the Zapatistas, a far-left pro-indigenous militant organization that desired autonomy within the state of Chiapas. The conflict went on for some time before both parties signed the San Andres Accords, which granted recognition of the indigenous Mexicans on autonomy to the Zapatistas in their controlled lands. Zedillo's presidency marked the end of pre-71-year-old hold on power. In 1997, the National Action Party made significant gains in the legislative election. And in 2000, Francisco Labastida, the pre-candidate for the presidential election, lost to Vicente Fox of PAN, officially ending 71 years of uninterrupted pre-rule. Zedillo currently works as a professor of Yale University, where he teaches economics and heads the Center for the Study of Globalization. Vicente Fox served as president from 2000 to 2006. A businessman who worked for the Coca-Cola company, he was, as I said, the first president to not be a member of PRI. Initially, he was wildly popular, with an 80% approval rating. But since then, his popularity fluctuated. As president, he continued the PRI's neoliberal economic policies, good relations with the US, and hostility towards socialist states, like when he attacked Fidel Castro for his comments on the US. However, by the end of his term, Fox didn't get the best reputation. He made multiple notorious comments, including one about African-American civil rights leaders. Anyway, so after his term ended, he essentially turned into a political commentator, and has had some strong words for Donald Trump. Like, super strong. Felipe Calderon served as president from 2006 to 2012. As the PAN candidate, he won a highly contentious presidential election, with Mexico City Mayor Andrés Manuel López Obrador, keep him in mind, trailing behind by less than 1%. Literally 10 days into his term, he declared a war on drugs against the cartels. By the time his term ended, it had already killed about 60,000 people. Additionally, he ruled during the Great Recession, which led to increased poverty and national debt. Calderon sought to counter these problems by continuing the neoliberal initiatives of his predecessors, including regulating markets and boosting competitiveness. Additionally, he expanded the Seguro Popular, which was the public health insurance covering millions of more Mexicans. After his term ended, he did a year-long fellowship at Harvard. Enrique Pena Nieto served as president from 2012 to 2018. Since he was a member of PRI, many people believed his tenure would mark a second chance for the party after 71 years of notorious rule. But that redemption not only didn't happen, but the party's reputation worsened significantly due to Pena Nieto. For starters, under Pena Nieto, corruption expanded to the point where there were corruption bus tours in Mexico City. Pena Nieto also gained significant criticism for his failure to protect journalists in a country that has been consistently ranked as one of the most dangerous countries to be a journalist. And even though he promised to significantly reduce the crime problem in Mexico, not only did he not do that, but he was allegedly bribed by El Chapo, the chief target in the ongoing drug war, with $100 million, which might explain his lackluster response to his many escapes. And in 2014, 43 college students were kidnapped and disappeared in Iguala. His attempt to downplay and cover up the situation only further damaged his reputation. By the time he left office in 2018, he had a 77% disapproval rating. Andrés Manuel López Obrador, aka AMLO, served as president from 2018 to 2024. He's a member of Morena, a new left-wing political party in Mexico which has since gone on to dominate Mexican politics now, currently having the most seats in Congress of the Union as of 2026. Before winning the 2018 election, he was the mayor of Mexico City and ran in the presidential elections in 2006 and 2012. Remember that controversial runoff with Calderon? Well, AMLO held a fake inauguration where he swore himself in as president. This is real. He won the 2018 election with the first majority vote seen in the 21st century. As president, he sought to curb corruption, with major concentrations in illegal fuel sales, known as huachicolero, tax fraud, illegal outsourcing, money laundering, and judicial corruption. His tenure also saw great improvements in social reforms, such as reducing poverty, increasing the minimum wage, and expanding social programs. Now, you know how I said presidents were limited to a 6-year term? Well, recently the inauguration date changed from December 1st to October 1st, so he served 5 years and 10 months in office. He retired after leaving. Finally, Claudia Sheinbaum has been serving as president since 2024. She is the first woman to hold the office of president in Mexico. She won the 2024 election with over 61% of the total vote. As president, she continued to roll back against pre-neoliberalism, expanding social programs, raising the minimum wage further up, pushing for green incentives, and reclassifying multiple institutions such as Pemex as government institutions, while dissolving multiple autonomous agencies. We're only in the first year or two of her presidency, so who knows what the future entails for them. Anyways, thanks for watching. This is Miller, Maryland. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time.